Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am O'Brien McMahon, and this is People Business. In this episode, I am joined by Mark Fithian. Mark is the co-founder of Wide Open, a consultancy that helps organizations achieve sustainable growth through strategic customer experience. Mark's expertise in CX is informed by more than 30 years of work across industries, partnering with leading brands such as Providence, SAP, PayPal, Optum, IBM, BMW, the American Cancer Society, and many more. Before founding Wide Open, he held leadership roles on both the client and agency side, as well as in strategic consultancies. He is also the co-author of the book, The CX Imperative, which is what we really dive into and talk about in this episode. I am a big believer in customer experience. I'm a big believer in user experience, experience design, just really crafting better experiences for ourselves, for the people around us, whether it's our families, our customers, whatever. And coming at this from the customer experience angle, I think is really interesting. I hope you enjoy. I think there's a lot of good philosophical stuff in here, but also some good tangible stuff if you are thinking about ways to improve customer experience within your organization. If you've seen things that need to be improved and just aren't quite sure how to start actioning them, how to start communicating them, that kind of a thing, there's something in here for you. Please enjoy Mark Fithian. Mark, welcome to the show. I'm excited to jump in and talk about customer experience. Just real quick, what is the difference between customer experience and user experience?
Let's start with the user experience. Typically, when you're saying user experience, you're confining that to the digital domain. That's where it evolved. It's specific to things like websites and applications and interaction design and those things. Customer experience is more broad. It includes user experience. You could consider it almost a subset of customer experience, but it considers the offline aspects as well and the totality of interactions, not just the domain of digital.
And how did you get into this work in the first place? I wanted to jump right in with that question right off the bat.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the origin story for Mark Fithian. How did you get into doing this?
I started in the digital domain. My career, I was working with this huge startup that Motorola had funded in the 90s. And at that time, I was in the marketing department and my boss was like, this internet thing, can you go build a website for us?
Can you go hang us on the web? Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. At that time, there was no digital interaction between customers and businesses or brands. So the website was the first instantiation of that. And so I got to build it. And in building it, to the previous question, you started to explore these domains of user experience. And the principles from that really stuck with me, really understanding how people engaged with the technology I just loved it. And I kept that thread in my career when I went to various agencies as the digital world boomed. And then in consultancies where you started to see that companies really struggle with connecting with their customers. The problems that we were solving in the digital domain were really larger than that. They were more about how customers were engaging or using, I don't even like that word user, but using companies. So that was the genesis of it, though.
And we've covered on this show before the concept of experience design and design thinking. Like, did you, somewhere in your background, did you go through formal design training or have you integrated design thinking? Or like, how do you think about design thinking and experience design either compared to or as part of the work that you do when it comes to customer experience?
It's crucial. There are a lot of great people in that space. And I don't profess to be an experience designer. I participated in many of those methodologies as they go through service innovation and so forth. Our work is more about, you might say, making sure that the inputs to experience design are highly valuable, they're actionable, and that the organization intends to do something with that design.
Yeah.
So it's a component, and in our book, we talk about it mainly in the context of blueprinting. But that domain, again, it did evolve significantly in the digital world when we were creating these apps and websites and so forth, and then expanded more broadly to business.
Yeah, it feels like the digital world opened up the user experience
Right,
language and
right.
oh yeah, we should be paying attention to this because we can all really clearly see in this new thing what is a good experience and what is a bad experience. And then all of a sudden
Yes.
everybody kind of looked around and started going, this applies everywhere. We're all living experiences all the time. And just because we're not interacting with a digital interface doesn't mean we're not interacting with the world around us. And it started to shift there, even though there were some people who had been doing this forever. The example that comes to my mind is like a Walt Disney, right?
Yeah.
How they designed Disney World, and the fact that the streets are all made of a different material in each different land. So it feels, you can actually get like a visceral feel like you're in a different world when you cross the border in from one world into another, or the fact that the trash cans are all different based on the world. So like just these things that are immersing you and creating this experience. He was doing that. I don't know when he built that. I could guess, but I would be embarrassed by somebody who actually knew listening. But many decades ago,
Yeah,
when he was building that, he was paying
Right.
attention to that. But like it got lost in a lot of ways after that until this reemergence of user experience.
Right. And then, yeah, I totally agree. And then the user experience process forced organizations to start thinking more about those issues. Like, what happens when a customer comes to see us? What do they do next? Where do they go? Where have they come from? How are we serving up content and experience that answers their needs or their tasks? And like in the early days, I think you'd look at websites and they'd be like org charts. You know, everyone thought, okay, I have to have a place for this department and this department. We've come a long way, but there's still a lot of that mentality out there in terms of how you engage with business.
Yeah. So let's, before we jump too deep into this, because I feel like I want to go, but I have a couple setup questions for you.
Right.
I used to ask this every episode and I would save it to the end, but I thought this
Yeah.
might be an interesting one to ask in the beginning here, which what in your mind is the purpose of business?
It's about creating value for various stakeholders, whether that's obviously shareholders or investors or the community that they're in, providing jobs and taxes and stability and innovation and things, and customers. Most importantly, from our perspective, it's customers, because if you don't provide value for those, us as customers, you can't do the other things either.
Yeah.
So that's really the focus of our
Yeah.
domain.
And we've talked about that here too, like no margin, no mission.
Yeah.
And it's no margin, no shareholder value.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's
Right.
the old saying, like nothing happens till somebody sells something. You need a
Yeah.
customer to engage with you before any of the other stuff can happen.
Yeah, exactly.
So then why are we so bad at this?
There are a few reasons. One of the issues is that as businesses grow bigger, they just get more distant from their customers. They become less human, they become numbers on spreadsheets. And the businesses, in order to scale and grow and satisfy the shareholders, you might say, they focus a lot on the operations and managing the business as opposed to orienting themselves to customer value. And over time, they lose that day one kind of connection that they had. And so the customers become abstract and they have forgotten how to deliver experiences that really matter. And it's hard work, by the way, especially in large fragmented organizations. It's really hard work
Yeah.
to do what we're talking about.
Is this what you refer to as the great distancing?
Yeah, that's the premise of the book, is that over time we've over-indexed. Not only have businesses grown larger, more complex, more global, but for many decades, it was shareholder primacy, which made companies short-term focus on the number and at the expense of the customer.
Yeah.
Now we're shareholders. We like good returns, of course.
Nothing wrong with returns for shareholders.
Nothing wrong with that. It's just they over-indexed on it, and it's not now core to the operations, which it needs to be.
Yeah. It does. It feels like there's so much focus on customer acquisition, sales, growth, hyperscale, and then on the other end, enterprise value, shareholder value. But those are just the ends of the barbell. There's a big hump in the middle that is customers who continue to engage with your business. And yeah, you need to fill the funnel and you need growth and you need all that. And yeah, you want to be providing value on the back end, but the whole machine is in the middle of those two things. But the other two are sexier in today's world.
Yeah. And people get compensated for them.
Yeah.
So the behaviors of the organization follow the incentives, right?
Yeah.
They're incented to hit certain numbers, and those numbers aren't usually customer experience numbers, things like recurring revenue. If I really value you, I'll be back. That's not necessarily how executives are comped.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I guess that's an interesting question. I didn't expect to ask you this question during this interview, but do you get involved in compensation conversations with organizations? Like, because incentives do matter.
Yeah.
A lot of your book is on the design of customer experience and orienting the organization operationally towards delivering better customer experience. But do you get involved in those conversations around incentives and what makes good incentives?
To an extent. I mean, we get involved in the sense that we need to, number one, know how the organization is incented, how leaders are incented, how their teams are incented. That drives their behavior to a large extent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a reality that we have to navigate. And then trying to reorient that to something that's more holistic and informed by customer value is a challenge. And depending on sort of their strategic ambitions, where they want to go with this, it is mandatory that they include some type of metric that is tied to that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always, I just find the concept of incentives to be fascinating.
It's super fascinating. The classic one is the sales guys are comped on landing the client and the success guys are comped on something else. And like the customer is caught in the middle.
Yeah.
And it's not their fault. It's the leadership hasn't aligned these metrics to.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is interesting about our organization, the one that I work in with my day job, is that our salespeople are compensated on retention the same way that they're compensated on new business.
It's not the case with lots of organizations.
Yeah. There's a lot of pressure to grow.
Yeah.
But you can't grow if clients are going out the back end. So
right.
There is a lot of incentive there to be building a sustainable business, not just pumping new clients through the organization.
And so then you have a stake as a salesperson in the work that someone else is doing way further down in improving the experience of the customer, right?
Yeah. Well, I say all the time, like I'm focused on how we keep it fresh for year 10. Like I'm more worried about the client who's been with us 10 years and hasn't changed their strategy, because I'm like, okay, how do we keep this fresh for that client? Now we have to really work at that, because otherwise you just fall into routine and eventually something will change and you get caught off guard. And it's funny, the longer the client is there, the more I worry about them.
That's good. You worry about them.
Yeah. I'm incented to too. I would like to think I would anyway. I'd like to think I'm a good human being and partner, but we all follow incentives. It is an interesting question to ask how our behavior would change if our incentives were different.
Yes, it is.
You know, like what behavior do we look around us and dislike that we would also do if our incentives were different?
Yeah. This work is much more difficult when the incentives are misaligned. It just is.
Yeah. So how do we tell if we're doing okay at this today? What's the first step of self-evaluation look like?
There are two parts to that question. One is what we were just talking about, which is, are we seeing our customers coming back to us year over year and voting with their dollars. A customer experience is not some nice to have philosophical eat your broccoli practice. Like it is about recurring revenue and growth. It is
Yeah.
core to that. It is what the purpose of it is. And beneath that, you've got all kinds of indicators that people use to gauge tactically whether or not they're doing a good job, whether that's satisfaction or surveys or NPS. There's all kinds of things that they use to manage that. But at the end of the day, are they committed to us through spending money? That's what we orient to. So I think that's part of the answer to your question.
Let me ask it a little bit differently too. Let's say we have been good at it.
Yeah.
What got us here won't get us there, right? Like the world is constantly changing. Our competitors are keeping up with us or catching up to us or getting ahead of us. Like everybody's innovating all the time. Everybody's trying to be better. How do we as an organization not drink our own Kool-Aid and get caught falling behind in this area? Like, how do we create an organization where we are continuously getting feedback and looking out and finding ways to improve versus just doing this once and forgetting it?
It's crucial. That's really the point of the book. It has to be part of your DNA. Like you have to think about and put the systems in place to deliver this sustainably over time. It cannot be like a one-off tactic. Like you cannot go off and just deploy some award-winning experience and check the box and say, hey, we're great. You're not. You have to build it into DNA.
So what is the process of building it in? I guess either what does it look like when it's working and part of the culture, or like what are the steps that would take to build it into your culture?
Yeah. Yeah. And keep in mind, O'Brien, I mean, you know this, we're doing this work. Organizations are doing experience work every day. They're spending billions of dollars on customer experience work. They just aren't doing it with the level of intention that we're talking about. And they don't have the operational practices in place that their teams can do this consistently over time. And so it's a commitment to installing what we call strategic CX as a practice. Like we want it to be as familiar to an organization as a domain like marketing. The challenge is that there's so many people who touch the idea of customer experience, responsible for delivering it, that they need to have shared practices. So that includes things like really having empathetic listening around customers, explicit strategy. The blueprinting domain has to be excellent. You have to have the right culture and you have to have the right operating model. So those things need to be installed in the business. People need to be taught about them. And they need to, an ideal world, like you say, there's an incentive around it for success.
It would seem to me like there's an element of agility that's needed here too, organizational growth mindset. Mm-hmm. Because to your point, like this isn't about doing a project and then implementing one thing. This is about ongoing iteration over time. Sometimes macro adjustments, but it's often just hundreds or thousands of micro adjustments day by day over a long period of time that are going to transform this. And so it seems to me like one of the key elements would just be like, we are willing to look at ourselves critically and make change. Nothing can happen unless that is the operating philosophy or psychology.
Yeah. Yeah. And open to doing it better together and recognizing that it can be done better and that the people that are doing this work today that are in their kind of crafting experiences, they want it to be better. They run into roadblocks all the time and trying to do this type of work. And so we need to get it out of their way so they can do it.
Yeah. And like anything, if the top leaders aren't bought into this, it seems like it would fall flat on its face.
It's harder. For sure. But again, they're already doing it. Okay. They are already doing experience work in every organization. They just haven't stepped back and looked at it with intention to say, what does this all add up to? And are we really supporting the reality of our customers' experience?
So maybe that's an interesting thing to dive into for people who are keyed into this. And oftentimes it's going to be the people who are on the front lines dealing with the customers who are most keyed into
Yes.
this, right? Like
Yes.
we talk about this in our organization. The farther away you get from the customer, the less adept you are at understanding what they need, and the
Yes.
less likely you are to build something that really fits what they need. So let's say somebody is on the front lines, salesperson, service person, whatever, and they start to feel like there are some changes that are needed. What are best practices for those people to start having conversations? Either what is the language, or what are the steps, or like how would you guide them to working up the chain to create a scenario where they're likely to be able to implement change?
Yeah, it's a really great point. And for certain industries, it's a huge asset that they have that customer intimacy. We do a lot of work in healthcare. There's no more intimate relationship with a customer than a clinician or a doctor or a nurse with you and me. That's pretty intimate.
Yeah.
That's a huge asset. And they see things that people in middle management and leadership will never see. And so I think it's number one, it's a cultural question too, primarily. Does the organization understand that value? And then do they have mechanisms by which leaders can filter these things up so that they can be addressed on a systematic level? They're like some of the best in the world of customer experience. Like listening to those frontline employees is amazing because they're able to channel and give voice to customer pains, like on behalf of the customer. And they give a lot of emotion behind it. And it's really important to satisfy your employees by making sure they can deliver great experiences. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does a little bit. I guess, what are some best practices organizationally then for those listening campaigns? Is it just walk the floor? Is it have
Yeah.
an inbox where people can send stuff? Or what does a good listening process look like for an organization internally and then with customers?
Yeah, I think any voice of the customer program will have an internal listening component to it where people are able to reflect what they're hearing, both positive and negative from customers, that leadership acknowledges that they've heard those things, that they, in many instances, reward employees for great listening and providing those stories back to management. Those are critical. There's a lot of work that happens in the healthcare space where they'll do rounding and team meetups, and that'll be an explicit thing that they talk about is feedback from patients. And hopefully that makes its way up through a program like a voice of customer program.
Yeah.
Internally.
And so are those things that you see?
Do you guys have mechanisms like that?
So it's interesting. I'm smirking. We are in the process of revamping what this looks like within our organization. Historically, the people who are working with the clients day to day are the ones making decisions on where we go and what we do. So we've talked, our founder, when he first started the business and up through today, even though he's passed away, we talk about being a producer-led business, which producer, salesperson on our end. So all the partners and shareholders in our business are salespeople and have a book of business and a quota that they're trying to hit, and they have retention goals. And so we are all out talking to customers and then also talking to new customers all the time. And so our executive committees are made up of those folks, and we're the ones approving budget for new investment and that kind of a thing. Yeah. And then to your point about distancing, our organization has grown. And even though we are still involved in that, there's just more people doing it now. Right. And so the ability to keep your arms around the consistency of all of it becomes much more difficult. And so I've just noticed that our organization is in an inflection point now where we are very quickly getting our arms back around, okay, what the next iteration of this process look like? And it's going to require some more formality. We've tended to be quite allergic to bureaucracy and anything that could even smell like bureaucracy. And so we're trying to walk the line now where if it feels like bureaucracy, we want to keep it on the sidelines, but there is something to having process in place around some of this stuff. And so we're putting more process in place around how do we solicit feedback internally, and then how do we solicit feedback from clients. And we're actually, it's on my agenda to put this on the calendar this week. Sometime in December, we're going to bring all of our sales leaders and all of our service leaders together and do a big 2-hour debrief on all the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities. Where do the associates need to level up? Where do the salespeople need to level up? And then we're going to use that to prioritize projects for 2026.
Yeah, it's great. It's rich territory. Voice of the customer programs are really great for taking in so many different signals that need to be considered and normalizing them in a way that the organization can understand and act on them. Otherwise, it's just noise and no one knows what to do with it.
Do you see clients of yours being afraid of negative feedback, like afraid to even ask the question to the customer because of what they might hear back?
No, I don't think they're afraid to ask it. They might be afraid they get negative feedback and what they have to do with it.
Yeah. I feel like there's a hesitancy in a lot of people to asking a question that is almost designed to have a negative answer.
Give me an example.
Just even putting a survey in place to go to clients at the end of every year to say, where could we be better? Are you having a good experience or not? There's a hesitation to doing that.
Right.
Because, oh my God, what if they hate us and they want to leave? And we need to know that information. we need to know. But there is a weird psychology thing that happens where we get very scared to hear that. Maybe it's that on an individual level, we feel very exposed. Like we're going to be culled from the herd because it's our fault somehow. But this is where I think we're giving back to the organizational psychology.
For sure.
Like there needs to be some psychological safety in the organization that, hey, we're okay with negative feedback because only with it can we correct it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's hugely valuable.
Yeah.
I always feel like in my life, I learned so much more when I fall flat on my face.
Oh, yeah.
Than you do when you're doing great.
Yeah.
That negative feedback could be 10x more important than the positive feedback.
Yeah.
Positive feedback's great too, but that negative feedback, it illuminates stuff. And it has the emotion behind it too that get organizations to actually act on things.
Yeah. This is a little bit of an aside, but years ago, my family had a family reunion up in Maine, and my cousin's girlfriend at the time was a yoga instructor, and we thought it'd be fun to do a yoga class with the whole family one morning.
Yeah.
And so we go down in the basement and everybody's set up, and she dims the lights and says, "I'd like to start this class with a quote." And we were like, okay, this is far more intense than we thought it was going to be as a family vacation. But she said, it was funny because this quote has stuck with me forever. Only when I accept myself as I am can I then change. And I think that's true for people. And I think that's true for organizations.
It's true for organizations.
If you can't look at yourselves in the mirror with full clarity, you can't change.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. I think from organizations they're like people, of course, like we don't like change for the sake of change. It's hard to go through change. So they resist it for any number of reasons. It's one of the reasons that we don't like talking about this work in the context of change.
Really, more about that.
Every one of these organizations at some point was very attuned to customers, and they still are to a large degree, right? They still have these orienting values, which customers they're held central. It's just they've forgotten, they've lost the muscle memory on how to do this work. And so it's not about changing them. It's about renewing that connection and commitment. There's no better way to kill a CX effort than to come in and say to a CEO, we need to change this part of the customer experience. They're like, dude, get in line.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
So how do we get around that? What's the hack to not using the word change, but impacting positive change?
I think you have to, number one, you have to meet the organization where it is. It has goals it's trying to achieve. They're well thought out goals. We're not in there to say, let's do something else. We're in there to say, how can we make sure that the experience associated with these goals is as awesome as it can possibly be?
Yeah. This
Right?
isn't change. This is refinement.
Yeah, this is refinement. This is like getting all those people you've got in that space that are pushing for that goal, get some of the barriers out of their way so that they can deliver this amazing experience.
Yeah.
So I think that's first and foremost. You've got to follow the lead of the organization.
Yeah, it makes me think of the leadership development group that I'm a part of at work and one of the coaches we work with, where we talk about giving feedback. And if you are going to give feedback about a person and it's about them and their behavior, it starts to feel very critical very quickly. And they start to put up walls very quickly.
Yeah.
But if you give feedback on performance towards an objective, you can actually push pretty hard and people won't have that same negative reaction, right? If it's like, hey, you're bad at this thing, it's, whoa, I don't like that. But if it's like, hey, we need to improve this thing so that our organization can do this better. And this is why this is important. And we need this process to look like this in the future. It's, oh, okay, I can actually rally around that. I can process that and rally around that because we're moving toward a goal together versus you just telling me that I suck.
Yeah, exactly.
And I hear that a little bit with you is, hey, this isn't going into a department and being like, you guys are terrible at customer experience. It's, hey, our customer, it's breaking down here. And if we're going to really deliver this, we need this to be locked up. So let's work together to fix this piece of it so that we can deliver this thing because we are here to perform for our customers.
Yeah. And you're part of this. You are part of this. In experience work in particular, it's because it's shared. They say it's a team sport, which is true to some extent. Everyone has a role in it. But when you don't explain to people what it is, why it's important to the organization and to them personally, and you don't give them the tools in order to affect it positively, they're not going to be able to be effective. So I think it's a cultural commitment of organizations.
So we've talked about this needing to be in the culture. I'm also a believer that if everybody owns something, nobody owns it.
Yeah.
And so where does this sit? Like at its best, who owns this?
Yeah. I'm going to come at this question maybe a little differently. We don't view this as a box on an org chart. We view it as a practice that is woven into the organization because the totality of customer experience is very broad. It's everything about the relationship that we have with customers. And so many parts of the organization touch that. From our perspective, who owns it, quote unquote, like how is it mapped in the organization depends largely on the strategy, meaning what are you trying to do? Where do we need to go? What do we need to fix first on behalf of our customers that's going to drive the business? Based on that, we can then map that to who are the stakeholders? Like, what's the RACI model behind that? And then that defines where it is. And it depends. A lot of organizations are incredibly decentralized or incredibly centralized and some degree in between. And so that configuration of ownership is going to look different.
Yeah.
But it comes down to what they're trying to do.
Yeah. It feels like there's a difference between who owns the execution of it and who owns the cultural messaging of it.
Yeah.
Because if something is going to be in the fabric of an organization, it's going to have to be in the values of that organization, and it's going to have to be in the language of that organization. And that is going to start, it might not be the CEO,
right?
But it's got to be somebody high enough up in the operational realm that they can drive that language into the organization.
Yes. Yeah, agree. Someone who sees themselves as a champion of customer experience. And they want to be known for that personally, professionally, within their organizations, and more broadly in the community
Yeah.
as an executive who champions customer experience.
Yeah.
Now, you could have a customer experience officer, of course, who influences and sometimes owns these experiences. That's not really what we're talking about, but that's definitely something that many organizations have.
Yeah. As you say, it has to be in the culture of the organization. I just think it has to be in the language of the organization.
It does.
Like the culture
Yeah.
of the organization is in a large part the language of the organization,
It is.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's true. And in our book, it's kind of the fifth pillar we talk about, but you could argue that it's the first pillar.
Yeah.
Customer experience will live or die based on the culture that you have. And all of our cultures, we have to work with the culture that we have in our organization. And that culture is going to be comprised of people who this is something they don't have any idea about, to I absolutely reject it, to I'm a champion of it, to okay, I'm not going to go against it. And if you're a customer experience champion or leader, you've got to manage all those expectations at all times.
Yeah.
It's hard work. It's like real work to create that culture and what you're talking about, the language. Like it doesn't just happen. You don't just like seed it and hopefully people are going to adopt it. You're going to have to put in real programs and work to make that happen.
I think that's true of any purposeful culture.
Yeah.
I like a culture will emerge. Culture is the easiest thing to create because just by being, you create some culture. But having an intentional culture is really difficult because you have to push against the natural psychology and entropy and other forces of the world that get into all sorts of human endeavors, right? And can cause problems. It's why I like frameworks so much. I think it's not so much about picking the best framework. It's just about having a framework for your organization and the work that you do. And like, maybe it's the CX imperative and that's the framework that you're going to use for this stuff. Or maybe it could just be that you have 5 company values and high quality service is one of those values. It doesn't matter. Like as long as you have a framework that you are using and that's how your organization talks, and that framework encompasses the key pieces that are going to make you successful, it almost doesn't matter. It's just, does it have the right pieces and are you using it?
Yeah. Well, I'd argue our framework's great.
No, I would too. And I think,
but I have to have those things.
Yeah, I would too. I just think for people out there, like in today's world, I think we are in some ways framework to death. And there's, okay, I have to have a framework for my morning routine. I have to have a framework for the customer experience. I have to have a framework for being the right leader. I have to have a framework for this and for that and for the next thing. And before you know it, it just becomes this web of things that you can't control. And I think just realizing that it's not about having all of the best frameworks. It's about having a few frameworks that really work for you in your life and your work. And go out and keep searching for better ones and try to find ones that really work. And hopefully CX Imperative does work for people because it is good. I have read the book, would recommend it to people. But it's like, you don't need to, I don't know, I'm rambling a little bit, but like you don't need all of the frameworks all of the time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you don't need frameworks for the sake of frameworks.
Right? Yes. Yeah.
And we like that just because those of us like me, I like the idea that I can control these things. The principle of the book was really that we kept seeing experience people run into the same problems. I've worked with 100 companies in my career. We keep seeing them in this space run into 5 problems. And so the frameworks are really about getting those problems out of their way so that they can achieve what they're trying to do.
So I got to ask, what are the 5?
The 5 pillars are insights around customers, particularly empathic insights that help you understand the reality and the totality of an emotional human being, strategy setting, blueprinting, operating model, having a very explicit operating model that tells people how to do this work, and then the cultural development. Those are the five.
So you've said blueprinting a few times. Can you dive into what that is?
So blueprinting is, we talked about it earlier, but principally it's about helping the organization execute against the strategy. The strategy sets the direction that we're going. It says we're going left, we're not going right, we're going left. But the organization needs to take that and then execute it. They need that kind of translated in a way that they can then operationalize it, whether it's like creating content or a campaign or a new product. And so blueprinting is that process which takes the strategy down to the business requirement level.
So if the strategy is we're going to go left, we're not going to go right, is the blueprint, we're going to engage the brake, we're going to hit our signal, we're going to turn the wheel. Like it's the actual operational stuff
it's
that's going to get the car going
mandate.
left.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It says, what does the operation need to do? The operation needs instructions for how to go about achieving the strategy. So that's what it is at the highest level for us.
And so I guess I overlooked strategy, but ultimately a good question is, what does strategy mean to you? Like, I think there's a lot of confusion around what makes a good strategy.
It's the most misused word in business.
Yeah.
Period. There's so much bad use of the word strategy and documents masquerading as strategy. It's awful.
So enlighten us, Mark.
Often it means, here's all the stuff I wanted to do. Now I'm going to call it a strategy. It just packages up all the stuff they weren't going to do anyway. But to us, there's a great book called Good Strategy, Bad Strategy by Richard Rummel. To us, it really is about choice. Like looking at all the possible things that you could do and choosing to go left. Not 50% left and 30% right and 20% center. It's a choice. You're going this direction. And in order to get to that choice, you go through a strategic process that we detail in the book, where you have a very clear-headed view of a lot of the data that you use to drive strategy, whether that's customer data or competitor data or business data. You set a realistic, ambitious vision, and then you tell the business what you want it to do in the form of what we call hallmarks that allow it to then operationalize it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. Either a list of values listed as a strategy.
Yeah, that's not strategy.
Which is too broad, or you go the other way and you see a list of tactics.
And that's not strategy.
As strategy. Yeah. It does feel like a hard sweet spot to hit sometimes.
It's very hard. This good strategy is really hard to do. I mean, you can land it on a page, but honestly, if you've looked at all the various alternatives and you've critically examined the various data that informs strategy as an organization, because this isn't just like O'Brien sitting in a room writing. This is done at an organizational level. It's hard work. It should be hard work. Like they should continue, like strategy is not done. Like you should always be wrestling with strategy because the dynamics are changing all the time. Customer expectations, they change constantly, let alone marketplace dynamics. It changes.
Would you mind if I quoted another podcast guest who I think has one of the best clear definitions of strategy I've ever seen? And this isn't a definition so much as this is like a template to fill out to create strategy. Curious what you think about this. Today, when blank group of people or individuals want to blank, they have to blank. This is unacceptable because blank. We envision a world where blank happens, and we are bringing that world about through blank.
Is that a strategic statement?
That is.
Are you asking?
Yeah. Just curious to your reaction.
Yeah, it's an interesting story.
Like that.
I would have to, honestly, O'Brien, how they got there is the question. That's the hard work of strategy.
Yeah.
Does the team who's responsible for creating that direction or that storyline, do they sit with the ambiguity of the data that is ultimately informing the decision?
Yeah. That's a
Right?
good point. It doesn't matter what, back to frameworks, like that is a framework, but that framework is only as good as the underlying information that you're putting into
That's
it
right.
and evaluating.
Do you really wrestle with this as an organization
Yeah.
and ask super hard questions like the question you raised earlier? Are we really doing a bad job? They don't even like to talk about that.
Yeah.
Are you really having those tough conversations? So I think if that's happening, that's usually a great indicator of strategy coming to life
Yeah.
in the way it should.
Yeah. It's funny, back to people having a hard time talking about this. I have been told that I'm a little too eager to talk about all the things that are going wrong in some of your personal relationships, when you can very quickly identify and want to address all the things that are not happening the way you want them to happen. Good in strategy planning, not so much in personal relationships.
Problems, yeah. That's funny.
Mark, I know there's a lot more to your book. Is there anything that we haven't covered today that you think is critical just to getting a base understanding of this for people, or getting them off the ground?
As I say, this is totally doable. Number one, because it's already happening. What we're talking about is taking it to the next level. And there are many champions of customer experience. They don't have to have a title of customer experience in their organization, but they believe in this. They understand it. They see firsthand what great experience does. They're at one with their customers. They want their organizations to be better at it. And I think for those people, I'm not talking to leadership. I'm talking about the people on the front line and the people who are like-minded believers around them. You have to start by working with the willing. You have to find people who see that there's a better way for them to do this. And you need to teach the organization by winning some small things.
Yeah.
Over time.
That's true. People want to do things that are working.
Yeah.
And if you can go out and prove that something is working or is a great idea, like, people will adapt.
Yeah. And they want to make it better. I don't think there's anyone in business who says, God, I really want us to be terrible at experience so their customers suffer.
Yeah.
They all want to be better at it. It's just, it is hard work and it requires some attention and new ways of working in order to do it.
Yeah. Mark, I appreciate you coming on the show. This is a fun conversation. I think about this stuff all the time. And as I mentioned earlier, it's good timing for me because we are involved knee deep in it right now, going through and figuring out what the next version of this looks like for us. And so it's exciting to be putting the strategy in place and exciting to figure out what that blueprint is going to look like. So thank you for coming on. And I encourage people, go out and check out Mark's book, The CX Imperative. And then where can people find you if they want to engage with you and with Wide Open? Because this is the work that you're doing and you do help organizations through this so they don't have to navigate it alone.
Yeah. Our website is thisiswideopen.com. This is Wide Open, all one word. And you'll find us on LinkedIn. And my email is mark@thisiswideopen.com.
There you go. I always encourage people who are listening to this who are like, oh, I need to go do that. Like, the guests I bring on are not people in some ivory tower. Like, these are people who actually dive into these things.
We do the work.
So,
we're hands-on.
So definitely encourage people to reach out to Mark and his team if they can help you with this. And Mark, best of luck to you and what you're doing.
Yeah. Thanks for what you do, O'Brien.
Take care, everybody. Hey folks, one last thing before you go. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to hit subscribe so you can stay up to date with future guests. That's it. Thanks for coming. Go make the most of your business and the people in it.